I used to think about it madly. You want a conversation gladly, and I'm hoping oh so badly you could show me who is Scott Daddy.
All right, let's get into it. What's up, anybody who might potentially listen now or in the future, as well as my 1 to 2 fans that have consistently watched my stuff. Been a busy guy, but school is over, I'm all done, and I'm ready to start doing a more consistent schedule. So I'm going to start doing streams on Wednesday and reacting to debates, videos, and then hopefully finding people who want to pop in every once in a while, come talk to me, debate, whatever. Today, I think we might have a guest. We'll see if he actually shows up, hopefully. If not, we'll just keep reacting. On top of that, I am going to actually start scheduling live in-person discussions at a studio that we just finished. So that will be pretty neat. Although, at least for now, that's just going to be for local people. You know, I clearly don't have the YouTube funds to be flying people in or anything else, right? This is a very new and casual thing for me. Anyway, today, reacting to Andrew Wilson and Planet Peterson talking about Christianity and government and on Breakfast Tacos YouTube page. I just recently discovered Breakfast Tacos platform, and, you know, I've seen people criticize him for moderation, but so far I've been enjoying it. I think he does a good job. So yeah, let's get right into it.
I am going to be ready in 3, 2, 1. Okay.
You now have
just
10
let
minutes.
Me know. Let me open up a timer. Okay. So, Andrew and I and Taco, we clarified this kind of behind the scenes in setting this up. But so the topic is Christianity shouldn't be in government. But we clarified government means the United States government. So Andrew doesn't have to defend some random country's government. And I don't have to defend the general concept of government, because that would make the debate impossible and pointless for both sides. A theocracy is a kind of government. So arguing Christianity shouldn't be in a Christian theocracy would be pointless. It would also be pointless to argue, does Christianity belong in an Islamic theocracy? So we agreed on that. So the United States government, it's a constitutional republic. That's a form of government where citizens elect representatives to make decisions, and the government is limited by a written constitution. Our government has features. Citizens elect representatives. They're represented in the Congress. And then there are specific limitations on the government. This means that we kind of know what the type of government we have does and how it functions. Not how it ought to function, but just how it does function. So to make it a little bit easier, I'm just going to draw kind of an analogy. Compare the government to some other sort of system, because governments are systems. So like an engine. An engine transfers mechanical power. There's no such thing as the correct engine, but you can still compare engines that transfer mechanical power, because that's the task of an engine, and then see which one is better at that task. Or we could say something like as basic as drawing a straight line.
Ads
No one
already.
understands me. If I actually told people
need
how
to
I'm
get
feeling,
a
they would think of
freaking
me differently. That is a
subscription.
lie that I told myself.
But again,
We're not saying you should draw straight
I
lines,
don't have the funds.
but just that
Anyway, so far, I do kind of consider the debate prompt a little weird. From the sounds of it, they were talking a little bit before this. From the sounds of it, they went back and forth kind of fighting about the actual topic because, well, if you know Andrew Wilson, he likes to only accept prompts that he knows he can try to corner somebody into something. So anyway, I think it's pretty cool that they landed on this. The fact that Planet Peterson is taking the affirmative of a position that they should not be in government, right? Christianity should not be in government. It's an interesting affirmative stance to take, rather than it being like, well, someone's arguing
you're
that
trying to-
Christianity should be in government, and then we're going to criticize that, or at least have an equal affirmative stance, as in Andrew says yes, and Peterson says no. Anyway, it just puts all the burden on Peterson, but you know, he accepted, and that's great. I am willing to bet, and by the way, I have watched this once. It was a bit ago, but I can't really remember. I watch a shit ton of debates, so maybe this isn't a prediction, but rather my memory. But I do think Andrew is probably, at least one of his points is going to be that, well, Christianity in government just means there are practicing Christians who can be elected politicians, right? And I don't think that that should be the focus of the debate. That's obviously, like, in a society, a liberal democracy, you know, anybody, Christian, atheists, or otherwise, right, should be able to pursue office. So it's not about individuals who are Christian, but rather, like, Christian religious dogma being implemented as law in our government. Anyway.
To do. A ruler does that very, very well, whereas a compass does that horribly. So we can't derive oughts from is's here, but we can still measure normative objectives, and more importantly, we can point out contradictions. In this case, the claim that a compass is good at drawing straight lines, it's not really a contradiction, but it is literally not true, and a ruler is definitely objectively better in this sense. So, back to constitutional republics. A constitutional republic that disenfranchises people and violates its own constitution is clearly one that doesn't work, because that's the opposite of what they are. So I'm not here to tell you that there's a correct type of government, that I know exactly what it is, or that Christianity in government would be, like, objectively the worst option or anything like that. But we can prove that Christianity should be in government is false, in the same way that a compass is good at drawing a straight line is a false statement. So point number one is that we literally know for a fact that religiosity positively correlates with dysfunctionality. You can read about this in scientific and other academic journals. I do have some studies. I can link those or share my.
So I do like this first point from Planet Peterson here, right? He's conceding right off the bat that, you know, we can't derive oughts from is's, but we can actually, just according to our definition of functioning society, we like an engine, right? We can compare better and worse systems, just like we can compare compasses and rulers.
Screen later. I'm happy to do that. Point number two is that the framers of the Constitution, I don't think they were idiots. They studied this and they thought about it extensively, and they understood that no religion can make a claim that is legitimate to rule that can be acceptable.
There's my water.
Even in a Christian nationalist's wildest dreams, this could never work because, well, if we became a Catholic theocracy, well, then Protestants would lose their minds. They wouldn't get what they want out of this. So what is it that you do then when you can't Christianize Islam, you can't Judaize Christianity, you can't Catholicize Protestantism? You make compromises instead. And that's what limited powers do. And that's exactly what happened. Madison drafted the First Amendment and its Establishment Clause. Now, Christians, in an attempt for confirmation bias, they try to, they go with this mantra of, no, separation in church of church and state. That was something Jefferson said in a letter. It's not actually in the Constitution, but what I suggest you do is that you should read what the Christian, Madison was a Christian, so this is, you could argue this is a Christian perspective. He's the one that wrote the amendment, and when asked what it means, or the Establishment Clause, when asked what it means, he said, Congress should not establish a religion and enforce the legal observation of it by law, nor compel men to worship God in any manner contrary to their conscience. So according to the United States Constitution, Christian ethics are forbidden from being part of government. A national religion creates a dysfunctional government.
Okay, so this is sort of where he can get himself in trouble, right? because he said that Christian ethics aren't allowed in governance. Now, the reason this is sticky is because it can be construed in a couple different ways, right? So depending on what we mean by this, I would either agree with Andrew or Planet Peterson. If what is meant by Christian ethics is, again, like I said earlier, the Christian dogmas, the religious principles being implemented into law, then yes, that's correct according to Madison and the way our Constitution's set up, is that, we shouldn't make laws according to religious institutions. However, someone like Andrew can interpret this as, well, Christian ethics shouldn't be in government. Doesn't that mean that, like, me as a Christian with my Christian values, my Christian ethics, can't run as a politician? I can't advocate for my moral principles? Because the answer to that, or basically, Andrew, it would be correct if that's the interpretation, right? Christians are allowed to pursue office. They're also allowed to, basically strive towards laws that align with their moral values, especially if they have a voter base that supports them, right? So that's a little bit sticky the way he introduces this argument.
It's a compass, not a ruler. So Andrew's position, I think, would be illegal. So I'm not really sure where, I mean, kind of good luck with that, I guess. I don't think Andrew respects people who loot and riot, cross the border illegally, or violate the Constitution in any other way. So I don't know. Well, I'm curious to see what we're going to hear, but that's an issue I think we have. And then the last thing is, the point of how I set this up is that governments are systems, and systems they have a certain function, and that function, if you want to discuss or describe how it ought to work or how it should work, what the best way to make it work is, these are just normative claims. So I'm not really here to talk about objective ethics or morality or anything like that. But if Andrew does try to do that, I'm not really sure that Andrew has the argument. But even if he did, we have the problem of arbitrariness, and you can't derive an ought from an is. So I'm not really sure how Andrew's going to try to prescribe Christianity being in government. He's perfectly welcome to use, because this is what I will try to do. He's perfectly welcome to use any normative claims for what Andrew wants to see happen in government and why he thinks maybe Christianity will help with that. But I think they're going to contradict both the religion and the government in question. And we'll see whatever it is, or later that whatever normative objectives Andrew believes Christianity brings, and those would be his reasons for wanting it in government. I think that there are serious and literal contradictions in almost all of them. So that's my opening statement.
Cool. Are you ceding the rest of your time?
Yeah, that was under 7 minutes, so I cede the rest of my time.
Perfect.
Centex customers can get affordable special financing offers
Okay,
through its
have
affiliate
the
Pulte
YouTube
Mortgage.
ads lately gone like through the roof? Because
Andrew, let me know
I
when you're ready. and
swear
I'll
they
start the
did
timer.
not used to spam.
Yeah,
this
well, I
much.
have 10 minutes, correct?
Yes, sir. Are you ready?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Well, you have 10 minutes starting now.
I would like to remark in my opening statement that Mr. Peterson made a very long hit piece about yours truly called Andrew Wilson is a Moron. Very good framing on that, by the way. In it, he claims that
As if
misrepresented
Andrew
and gave
doesn't
bad
frame
arguments against
things that
secular
way.
humanism and Craig FTFE.
Okay, this is the thing with Andrew,
when offered-
right? Like, obviously, you're gonna see some bias out of me. I do watch Andrew Wilson often, okay, and the frustrating thing about him is he will take opposing sides when it's convenient to him and his rhetoric. Essentially being able to just dunk on people in debates. Like, his goal is to dunk and to win debates, which is quite literally sophistry, right? Plato, in the ancient Greek days, writing about Socrates, right, they would talk about sophistry a lot. And the number one difference was that the sophists would take money from people and train them, which Andrew does. He has a debate training course, which is fine. Like, that's not itself sophistry. I'm not claiming that you can't hire out your services and teach people how to debate well and argue what their positions are. But that is part of what the ancient Greeks called sophistry. And the other aspect is simply that the debate is about, for the sophists, winning rhetoric, dunking on their opponents, making them look stupid, right? And that is all that Andrew does, right? It never really seems like Andrew cares that much about the truth of the matter. It seems like he cares mostly about winning the rhetoric and making his opponent look stupid. So I'm bringing this up, right, because he criticized the moron thing. Oh, Andrew Wilson's a moron, but go look at his videos. He'll take the other side of that constantly harassing his debate opponents, calling them fucking idiots, morons, whatever it might be. And so it's just funny, he'll take this oh, calling me a moron, and then on the other coin just do it back. So and that's just a small example of what I see him do even in rhetoric about arguments themselves. He'll call out black and white thinking, right? The false dilemma fallacy. I've seen him recently call out somebody for doing the fallacy of false dilemma. But all of the time, he tries to lock his opponents into a corner of a false dilemma. For example, the one he does the most is by correlating feminism to all of the birth rates dropping right now. He says this is a 1-to-1 relation. It's all feminism's fault, right? And he locks people into this false dilemma when in reality there are a multitude of reasons for declining birth rates. For example, the fertility rates themselves are declining. And this could be a number of things between our food, plastics in our water, pollution, whatever else, maybe vaccines. I don't think it's vaccines necessarily, but I'm not ruling them out. And so this is fertility rates. These are people who want to have children, right? And then there's other things like social media, right? Modern materialism without any sense of purpose and meaning. Yet he always tries to lock it into, feminism is the problem, right? So anyway, that's just an example of him doing that.
For the same debate with the same prompts so he could prove it, our good friend Mr. Peterson did decline. I just want to point that out. Instead, demanding that we do a debate where I needed to, quote, convince him Christianity needed to be in government. When I said that was fine, if I could do the same thing to him in secularism, he also declined. He also, strangely enough, told his audience some false things, and I just want to clear those up very quickly. Mr. Peterson didn't demand this format of debate, so I couldn't evade questions. Rather, we are doing the format that Taco himself does every single debate I have seen him host, and the same format that Taco requested to begin with. So I have no idea why Mr. Peterson made that up, but he did. Perhaps to sound like he got me in some kind of format I'm not used to, but he's going to find out better tonight. Now to the debate itself. Mr. Peterson has the affirmative that Christianity shouldn't be in government. He qualified American government, which I agree to. He just went over that himself. I'm completely uninterested in any tangential debate that Mr. Peterson actually wants to have, which is just God isn't real, though, which means nothing in this debate. To start with, I'd like to bring up the country most libs point to as the happiest in the world, Finland. In the happiest country in the world, there exist 2 state churches. Yes, that's right, 2. Both of these bodies have the ability to levy taxes. The taxes paid by members of the 2 churches and the rates determined on the parish level. While the government collects the taxes, the 2 churches pay for the cost of collecting them and receive the amounts paid. These go to fund the maintenance, repair of churches, and public services such as record keeping, funeral services, and many others. We would call this a form of symphonia in Orthodoxy. The idea of the church working hand in hand with the state.
See, this is already super disingenuous, right? Because Andrew is very clearly on the record of being anti-secular government, right? Very much against this. Finland's government, it's maybe hard to define exactly if it's secular or whatever else, but generally speaking, as far as I can tell, Finland is literally a secular government. They have freedom of religion. They've allowed people to happily pursue religion, even to this state level, supposedly, that whatever Andrew's saying, and I don't know, I'd have to check up what exactly he's saying, but they are considered a secular state. And this is the thing about secularism. You can have fucking religion. It's not that hard. Like, the whole point really here, this is the broad idea of secularism versus religious states or theocracy. In a secular society, all of the religions can exist in there and thrive if they pursue their own values, right? However, reversed in a theocracy, not all of the religions can thrive, right? Or atheists, non-practicing people, right? Like, they act like secularism kicks out their religion. It doesn't. It totally encompasses anybody's religion. And Finland itself is this, right? There is a freedom of religious pursuit. And as far as I can tell, again, I'm not digging super deep into it. I'm not just using Google AI, although yeah, sometimes it's not the worst. But like, to his point, right? They are majority Christian, right? They do have these churches that sort of what did he call it? Synchronizing theory, right? Where churches will work in tandem with politicians, I guess, to sort of promote values of Christianity. But this still is a secular government. So anyway.
Presented by a two-headed eagle. Now, here in the USA, you can imagine that the government levying a tax at the behest of the church and then collecting it along with normal income taxes would be something Mr. Peterson wouldn't like very much. It's an example of the church and government working just fine. But wait, there's more. Since these are two different churches, one the Orthodox Church, the other a Lutheran church, you would think there would be significant social problems. He brought this up in his opening.
It is amazing. They used to have a collagen, used to have a probiotic, a green juice. I replaced it all with this Arma.
Quite the contrary. That's odd considering their dogmas and doctrines are so removed from each other, isn't it? Yet, by all accounts, these two bodies, while they engage in rigorous debate, generally work hand in hand towards the general good and welfare of the peoples of their nation. Mr. Peterson will claim in this debate that there are so many different denominations of religions. How did I predict that? How could we possibly choose which one would represent us? Yet, all of those denominations exist in Finland, and they're doing fine. The happiest people on earth, supposedly. Yet, they have Buddhism, Hindus, Jews, Catholics, Anglicans, Islamics, all under the same roof of a nation, with two denominations being officially recognized as state churches, and those churches having a say in actual policy making. This should be some kind of nightmare for Mr. Peterson, but it seems to work so good that they're the happiest people in the world. Go figure. Now to U.S. policy, try to understand that our nation itself isn't divorced from religion any more than Finland, and never has been. There's simply an establishment clause saying the federal government can't favor one religion over another or prohibit the free exercise of it. Interestingly, they still can. One way is they simply don't recognize a religion as valid, and they do this by not recognizing the church as legitimate and not recognizing them as a church and giving them the same status as other churches. Which, by the way, they do all the time. The IRS has official rules for what a church is. In fact, it includes creeds, forms of worship. It's super extensive. Now to the arguments themselves for Christianity being in government. One, the early history of the United States is one that tells a different story than modern secularists would have you believe, like Mr. Peterson.
He's
the founders
so
in shaping
about
this constitutional republic referenced Deuteronomy more than any other philosophy.
It doesn't
this
matter.
study was cited by the American.
It doesn't matter if the founders were Christians or cited Christian texts, because they clearly even as Christians themselves wanted a secular state. Andrew just doesn't understand that Christians can be secular. Like, what the fuck? It's not that hard.
American Political Science Review and is noted by the C.S. Lewis Institute, who remarked this. This is also a book that records God's dealings with the chosen nation, especially in establishing the political and legal institutions necessary to govern a nation. Now, we can find text in the New Testament that deals with government. Think Romans 13, for example. And it gives us a sense of the duties of citizenship and the like. But what we find in the book of Moses and in that condensed version of Deuteronomy is the nuts and bolts of how do you make the establishment of a nation. This is direct proof, by the way, end quote. This is direct proof the Bible was indeed used heavily to determine government structure itself. My second argument is that most states that are founding already had state religions.
That's a
and
great
that you had to
argument,
swear
buddy.
oaths
It
to
doesn't matter
Christianity
at
to even
all.
hold office. The Constitution was ratified 1788, and there were still states with official state religions, which makes it laughable that under the 10th Amendment, they didn't allow states to have state religions, because they clearly did. Our founders were fully aware of this fact, stating the Constitution was for a moral and religious public. Quote, our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. John Adams. Adams is talking about men who believe like Mr. Peterson, by the way. 9 of these states required a sworn oath that Jesus Christ is Lord, in fact. There didn't seem to be very much confusion. My third argument is that the entire United States is already run like a religious institution. Men with ceremonial black robes who sit on high pedestals judge the people on judging days. Other men in black ceremonial robes give and interpret the law. We have national anthems, the etymology of which are...
This is actually an interesting point from Andrew. I actually somewhat agree with this, right? Depending on how you're defining religion or whatever else. But, I think a flaw with secularism as a philosophy, as an ideology, not necessarily politically and governance-wise, but just the thought of religiosity being separate from people and communities is pretty flawed, right? Like, people, even atheists, right? Again, this can get semantic or pedantic, whatever else, depending on our definitions and whatnot. But people sort of live religiously. We engage in rituals. We pursue meaning between partners and community, right? So the rituals like the national anthem and anything else, right? There's a natural tendency in humans to have this religiosity, this kind of mode of living that is meaningful to us. And we have rituals and standards and processes like the judges and in the black robes, right? Like, now, obviously, that doesn't mean these guys are faith, like, necessarily. They don't have to believe in God or be a part of a certain faith or something like that. But the point is, there is this ritualistic process and religiosity behind it. And I agree with this, right? Like, I do think that the sort of severing of secular and religious society was problematic in our early modern history, kind of coming from Immanuel Kant and Martin Luther, right? The Reformation stuff. I am not religious, or after I just made that whole argument about religiosity, I'm not particular to any religious institution, organized religion, right? So the point with secularism is more akin to like separating organized religious institutions from the general public, right? I can have some Christian believers over here who are just simply individually in relation with Jesus, sort of, love of God. They read their scriptures, but they don't go to church. They don't pay tithes to a specific religious institution. They just live their life how they want. So that guy, secularism's important for this person, right? Because we're protecting from the organized religion and the institutions that sort of you know, just like governments, they power grab, they collect money, and they allocate that money to different, you know, projects that they see fit. So yeah, it's, the point of secularism is not that just, well, nobody's religious. Really, the point is that we all have the freedom to pursue religiosity however we want, rather than dictated from God, Emperor, whoever Andrew worships.
Liturgical hymns. We have dogmatic beliefs in every sense of the word. Dogmas around patriotism, American exceptionalism, a strict adherence to the concept of rights, an invisible metaphysical concept, which isn't true, but we put faith in it anyway. We persecute heretics. We call them communists and socialists and people who, quote, want to destroy our way of life. Anybody who...
Okay, rights do not have to be some metaphysical, immaterial thing, right? There are things such as natural rights. What that means is any natural being literally has the right to do whatever is in their power, right? So whatever's in their willpower and capability to do. So literally, I have the natural right to go kill someone because I'm capable of it. Like, that's just natural law. I am capable. If I have the willpower, then I have the fucking right, right? This is sort of the will to power thing from Nietzsche. The point of governing societies, especially social contract theory type liberal democracies, is that we actually restrict these rights. We all sort of engage in this. Now, the social contract is imaginary. That's correct. But so maybe you could say we have faith in that, and that could be fair. But the rights themselves are there. We can just do what we want. It's the whole point is these governing systems restrict people's rights. They say, well, let's all give up our ability to just go kill someone whenever we want, because that seems to enable a better, more flourishing society.
Goes against the law of the land is interpreted by the lawgivers and the law interpreters in the black robes, and they will be persecuted for it. Things like rights and other dogmas are forced on the population as a way in which they must live their life, as a sense of normative claims. Our politicians take oaths of office, often given on the Bible itself, but the fact they are giving oaths at all infers there will be some kind of divine intervention to that oath breaker. They give oaths of office just like they used to. I would argue the entire system is religious and dogmatic in its very nature, and Peterson will have to explain why those dogmas are incompatible with Christianity, or reject it, or in any way wouldn't be made better by it. My fourth argument is that blind justice makes no sense. It makes no sense absent the Christian view. This concept is uniquely biblical. Neither rich nor poor judge them the same. In a non-Christian view, there isn't really any reason at all for justice to be meted out the way we mete it out. An eye for an eye or serious punishment is just as reasoned for justice as forgiveness and rehabilitation. Why can't a rapist be castrated or graped himself for the crime of grape? Why not murder the murderer? This is every bit in conformance to reason as the current justice code, except the current one still relies on Christian ethics. I have 6 more arguments after this, but
Wait, why is that according to reason?
mete it out the way we mete it out. An eye for an eye or serious punishment is just as reasoned for justice.
Like,
as
he's
forgiveness
quoting
and
religious text
rehabilitation.
again. I know it's
Why
not
can't a
Christian,
rapist be
but
castrated or graped himself for the crime of grape? Why not murder the murderer? This is every bit in conformance to reason as the current justice code,
Nope.
except the current one
See,
still
he's not actually. He's just saying this is according to reason, but the reason he's citing is yet more religious text, an eye for an eye, or human history, historical analysis of humans wanting to get an eye for an eye. That's not according to reason. That's according to religious text and historical analysis, which, to be fair, reason's required for those things as well. But there's no additional reasoning here. You're just relying on historical analysis.
relies on Christian ethics. I have 6 more arguments after this, but I think that that's probably as much as I can fit in for my opening. But let me address a couple of things before we get to the cross-examination.
Imagine making $453,000 in a single month as an affiliate marketer without
I agree with Mr. Peterson. He can't get an ought from an is, but then he makes this really bizarre claim. He said, Peterson says, I'm at the mercy of a should claim, but he's at the mercy of a shouldn't claim, which is also an ought claim. I don't know if he knows this or not. When you say you should not do thing, that's also an ought claim.
This
It's
is
like
absolutely
saying you should
true.
do a thing.
Yep.
So saying we should not have Christianity in government is making a normative claim.
Yep.
It's literally making an ought claim. So I don't know what the fuck he's talking about there, but we can get into it.
I'm not sure if Planet Peterson
What can you
was
do
disagreeing with that,
when
but-
you can't criticize Islam, he says, or Christianize Islam or Christianize these people? What do they do in Finland, where all of these different denominations live together and there's two state religions? Well, what happens is the 10th Amendment goes into effect, and it's up to the ethics of the population to put in the religion that they choose. Also, he says Christian ethics are barred from government, and that's actually kind of just counterintuitive and stupid. If you vote your conscience and you're Christian, that's Christian ethics. Just like that, that's Christian ethics. If you're a politician and you're voting based on your normative ethical framework and you're a Christian, you're going to be voting against abortion bills. You're going to be voting against tax bills. You're going to be voting for all sorts of different things.
This is the point I made right off the bat, right? That they need to, both of them, this isn't just on Andrew, they need to hash out the difference between Christians with Christian values pursuing political offices and attempting to write laws based upon those versus just a sort of top-down synchronicity with church and state dictating laws, right? So those are two different things. And the previous one, right, the one that Andrew's describing now, has always been the case. Christians have always been allowed to pursue office and sort of pursue their values and everything else, right? They need to do it the same way. They have to get a populace of people that vote and support them. And it's fine, right? Secularism allows for people of all faiths to pursue their values.
Which you're going to rely heavily on your actual ethical framework, which is Christianity. It's already there. It's already there. And does he want to get rid of it? No. What he'll say instead is, no, I'm fine if Christians utilize the Constitution by voting in other Christians who can then amend the Constitution. So it's like, he can't even tell me that they shouldn't be there. He'll actually have to say that they should. And with that, I'll cede my time. We can get into the cross-examination.
That was perfectly timed. So we'll be moving into the cross exams. The affirmative is going to go first. You'll have 30 minutes, and then the negative is going to have 30 minutes as well. Once again, in the cross exams, please make sure to address your opponent's questions directly and concisely. And also, try not to turn it into your cross exam, right? It's okay to ask a clarification question. But Eric, whenever you're ready, let me know, and I'll start your timer.
Well, real quick before you start, I'll make a deal with you, Eric. I'll answer all of your questions good faith and concisely. If you promise you'll do the same when it comes to my cross-exam.
I mean, that's what I planned on doing.
I know. I just always make that deal at the outset because, well, people often, if they
That's
go
so
first,
funny.
well, they become bad faith when it becomes your turn to cross-examine them.
What a
So
weird
if we make that
approach.
deal, I'll do it.
Okay. Good.
Yeah,
Good,
I mean,
Andrew.
Sure. The only thing,
right.
I mean, I'm going to be pretty anal about like staying to the topic of the debate. That's
Good.
you know,
Yeah. No problem. I'm not going to divert. I'm just
How do
here to
I wanna
answer your questions
put
on
this?
cross-examination from my position.
I haven't played this game
Okay.
in a while.
That's fine. Taco, I'm ready. So just tell me when you're.
Yep, starting the timer now. You have 30 minutes.
Okay. During the summer of 2020, the summer from hell, and all the I'm sure you remember, Andrew, the Black Lives Matter riots were going on. There was a lot of looting that was excused by certain like radical leftists, and their rationale for that was because the people who were stealing were poor, and they stole from mega corporations, for example, who have too much and they don't contribute to society. So I assume you don't accept that position.
I actually don't understand how this relates to the topic, but I'm willing to engage with it, I guess, anyway. No, I would not accept that standard. But I think that the justification they were really using for BLM was different, which they were making it about social justice. Though I do think there were a few leftist apologists who were definitely making the claim of social inequality.
Yeah. And okay, that's perfectly fine.
Now,
I mean,
this
without
is
getting
a
into,
genuine question because
like,
I
if-
actually don't know. I don't know leftist apologists, or maybe I do. I just don't consider them that way. But I'm curious if, because this is something I think, both agree with, right? And I'm not necessarily disagreeing, but I'm curious if what the apologia was justified in the sense of, well, we're descriptively explaining the process, like what happens when people are in dire poverty, how they react, right? The desperation that makes way for them to go sort of loot things and steal from big corporations, right? Now that I think about it, I have seen clips of Hassan, like, sort of, yeah, I think he totally was like, yeah, like, go steal. So Hassan was like prescriptively saying, like, yeah, you should go do this. Fuck the corporations, fuck all this, go steal, yada yada yada, right? But I think there was also a lot of people, and might I say majority outside of these pockets of popular people like Hassan, I think the majority were probably saying something akin to, like, hey, look at our system, critically analyze the material condition, what's happening here, look at the poverty and just the blatant like poverty, right? And wealth inequality. These conditions are like breeding grounds for people to rise up and just say, you know what, fuck this, I'm gonna go take shit from corporations. That's not like me prescriptively justifying it. That's me descriptively justifying it, in the sense that, hey, we should understand how our system operates. We should understand our social relations, our economic relations in our communities, because if we don't understand them well, things like this will probably happen. When people feel desperate, when people feel angry and that they've been treated unjustly, they are gonna fucking do shit like this. That's just how people are.
If you can do it quickly, fine. If you don't want to, then, or if you don't think you can, that's fine. But what's your position on like the redistribution of wealth in general, in welfare in general? Just kind of like for, against, or, and I think it can be done properly, but whatever.
Oh man, that's that's kind of loaded. So generally speaking, I'm a capitalism supporter. I think that has done, as Bono rightly pointed out, it has done more to bring people out of poverty than any other system which is available. But I also believe in the charitable donations of the various peoples who follow the faith, and that they should help where they can help.
Well, personal charity and redistribute. I guess I was thinking from the lens of a bureaucratic government apparatus.
Well, I mean, it's hard. You'd have to give me something specific.
Wix gives you the power of AI to build the website you need. With full...
Like, do I think that the government has a right to levy taxes? Yes. Do I think that the government should levy income taxes? Probably not.
Okay.
I think there's better ways like tariffs or things like this, but generally speaking, I'm against a redistributive model. If you're talking about government takes from rich guy and hands it to the poor guy, generally speaking, I would be adverse to something like that.
Okay, fair enough. So I have some quotes, and I want to read the quotes for you, and then I'll kind of get your reaction to them. Whatever certain people have in superabundance ought to go to supporting the poor.
Mm-hmm.
The next one is, it is lawful for a man to support his own need by means of another's property, by taking it, either openly or secretly. This is not, properly speaking, theft or robbery. Another one,
Wait, say that one again.
It is lawful for a man to support his own need by means of others' property. By taking it either openly or secretly, this is not, properly speaking, theft or robbery.
Okay.
Couple more. Anyone who has material possessions and sees his brother in need but does not help doesn't possess love. And this last one's not super relevant, but well,
Yeah.
it's
You're
kind
talking
of
about, well, the third one's referencing sins of omission. So there's 3 categories of sin, and a sin of omission would be like you can help a person, but you choose not to help a person.
fair enough.
Yeah.
Next one. Now, in human society, no man can exercise coercion except through public authority. With regards to rulers, the public power is entrusted to them that they may be the guardians of justice. It's not exactly related to the others, but kind of in a little bit. Or will be in a little bit. So I have one more quote, but one more preface to the quote for you. So sorry to bombard you with quotes, but there are some people like Hassan Piker, not a huge fan of him. You probably aren't either. But they take this
we just brought him
position
up.
that, for example, being tough on crime doesn't do anything, or that's the wrong position because it doesn't address root causes. Instead, they believe we should expand welfare or do reparations or whatever to lift people up, and then people just won't want to steal. I think that that's kind of like me. I don't think that that's right. I'm just curious what your take on that is.
Well, I think that you can have a multi-tiered approach. In the purpose of Christian ethics, we definitely have to keep dangerous people away from society, but we would try to focus on rehabilitative justice before we would try to focus on corrective justice, meaning, and when I say corrective in this sense, I just mean punishment. So rehabilitation would
Where's my
always tend
celebrity?
to move to the forefront. Though there could be exceptions to that, depending. It just kind of depends on what the case use is.
Sure. To be a little more clear, the idea is that this isn't about this is about before people enter the justice system. Do you agree with the idea that we should like expand welfare and things like that so that people have better means so that they don't feel like stealing? Do you think that would
No, I would
actually
adjust.
help?
I would adjust policy so that you could try to steer clear of there being a need for welfare. So I think addressing things like inflation, the value of the dollar, Congress's ability to coin money,
Okay.
various things like this would be a much better route to attacking the causes of poverty rather than just handing poor people money. Ultimately, I don't think that gets at the root either.
Okay, fair enough. And then I have one more quote for you. Sorry to do that, but the quote is, and it's related to the thing about, well, we shouldn't be tough on crime. We should just give to the poor so that they don't want to steal. So here's a quote. There are dreadful punishments enacted against thieves, but it would be better to make such good provisions that every man might have the means to live and so be prevented from the necessity of stealing.
Yeah.
So I gave you a litany.
I
of
actually
things-
would generally agree with that statement. But when you're talking about the conditionals for how you go about that, that may be where you would get into the argument. Like, what are the conditionals
Sure.
which would address the fact or the thing that made the person the thief to begin with? I don't think that it's solely going to be pointing at poverty. There's going to be a multifaceted effect counter. So,
Fair enough. In the context of the person speaking about that, that is kind of what they were talking about because they were talking about people stealing. So it is material needs that aren't being met. But anyways,
well, who's the person speaking there?
I'll tell you in just a second. So I just want to know, do you agree with
After you feel like you
any-
snared the trap, go ahead.
Yes.
Go ahead, bro. Yes.
So do
Yes.
you agree with any of the logic of any of those quotes I gave to you?
Yeah, they would have to be context specific. It's like if you do what's called a quote mining, and you probably run into this all the time with academics. People will take studies, they'll quote mine from studies, or they'll quote mine from various academic papers, and then use that as an example. Flat earthers do this all the time to you evil
Nice
globies,
use
right?
of flat
They
earth.
take just portions of what's being said and they don't
That's actually a
contextualize
good
them.
move from
And
Andrew.
so because they don't contextualize them, you don't really understand in context what they're saying. So I could easily on the surface agree with at least some of what's being said here, but I would probably need to dive into the contextualization.
Well,
So one
I'll
more
try to pick out one that I
geologist.
think is actually
Not
unambiguous.
sexy.
And it is the idea that
Workaholic.
it was the second one, the one you
Let's
had
go.
me reread. If somebody steals from somebody to support his own needs, and that person's poor and that other person is well off, then that isn't technically theft or robbery.
Yeah. Well, the thing is what you're talking about is you're talking about a pardonable sin. So like this is a normative fight that people have all the time in Christianity or probably in every secularism, whatever it is. The idea is like if you're coming out of the desert and you're parched and you're going to
Spending
literally
so much
die if you don't
money.
steal water from a well, are you justified in stealing water from the well? Right? This is what the question is. And so again, I think that you can add some sort of pardonability to something like that versus well, I broke into your house to steal shit so that I could buy drugs. I think that that's
It's almost like some principles, moral principles, Andrew, are not actually strictly universal. They are particular in the sense that the context matters to what is happening in the environment and what is happening to the individual. It's not just universally the case that theft is always immoral, right? Sometimes there's pardonability because the particular case has some context to it that we ought to analyze with our reason and come to an agreement upon.
I think that there's a distinction in contextualization, and that's why I can't actually agree or kind of disagree with that without additional context.
Okay, in America today, does that sound like something you would support?
Let me guess. You're thinking
Oh
about
my
going
God,
to
these
therapy.
ads.
And as a therapist
Holy
myself,
shit.
of course I'm going to say that's a great
Also,
idea.
guys, I am not used to streaming, so apologies for being rough around the edges, but we'll get there. I'm going to start doing this consistently. And I hope people like my wall. I still have some stuff to hang up over here. It's empty, but the whole vibe is we got our glass heads over here and a bunch of masks and different personas and stuff. So it's kind of like the talking head vibes. It's the discourse den. That's where the talking heads, diversity of heads come to hash out the disagreements. Anyway, I don't know why I thought I needed to go on that tangent, but now that I have, I want to say I do have a Discord, in which it's in the description, I believe. You can click on it. Anyone's welcome to join it. In fact, if anybody wants to come talk to me today, even bring some disagreements or whatever else, I would love people to join that Discord. Maybe I should hop in the voice chat, just in case people see me there. I was gonna do that actually. Fucking idiot. Let's go to Chill Talk for now. So yeah, I'll be there. If anyone's welcome, like I said, come bring out your agreements or disagreements, whatever.
Generally speaking, no. But again, I still think that if like a kid stole a candy bar, I wouldn't cut his hands off either, right? I would give some kind of pardon for that.
Well, yeah, but I mean, we're not talking about we're not talking about children.
I'm talking about a
And
19-year-old. Let's just say, like, I'd call him a kid, right? 19, but he's 19, right? He's a dummy. He did something stupid. You know, he stole a candy bar or something like this because he didn't have enough to eat. I think that most people would probably pardon something like that.
Yeah, but I mean, the question
Because morals
isn't
are
whether or not we
particular
should
to
enact
context.
corporal
That's
punishment
why.
for it. It's whether or not it even counts as theft. And a pardon doesn't mean that you absolve the person of guilt either. So I've already used my first 10 minutes, so I kind of want to go on.
Yeah, I don't want to sidetrack. If you can give me the context for this, I can answer it better.
I actually don't think that these.
You don't want to give me
See,
the
this
context.
this is
because then the
exactly
trap
what I was
doesn't work.
talking about earlier with Andrew Wilson, right? Because I have seen him over and over and over hold people to universal principles with their own logic and frameworks, right? And if he can set them up in a logical inconsistency with their principle of morality or whatever their framework is, then he's like, oh, trap snared, debate over, right? Because you are now logically inconsistent. But yet, here he is admitting that our morals, even in Christian ethics, are contextual to what he's saying. You got to give me the context, right? Universal principles don't just hold the same way in every single situation. They're all different. You have to analyze the context. They're all particular to the individuals and the relations.
Can you just give me the context, and then I can answer it honestly?
See, what I think is not... Well, no, I think you're not answering because you don't... I guess I'm not really sure. I don't find these quotes to be requiring very much context. It's not theft if you don't have and you steal from somebody somebody that does, or that people with superabundance ought to give their things away. So the reason
so again, generally speaking,
Andrew, I'm reclaiming my time here. We've already gone through these, so I want to move it along. So I'm not changing the subject. I'm just moving it along.
No problem. It's your cross exam. Go ahead.
But I don't think that these things, I don't really agree that these are my politics either. And I'm a left winger, but I don't think that these agree with your politics either as a right winger. But these quotes are from Jesus, St. Thomas Aquinas, and St. Thomas More.
Yeah. Well, who made that quote?
Which one?
The one you just read.
I read 4 of them. They came from
the last one. The last one that you said is unambiguous.
The second one I said is unambiguous, which was, it doesn't count if it's theft if you... Who said it? That's Aquinas.
Yeah, Thomas Aquinas. So the thing is Aquinas's worldview, especially Aquinas, this is why context matters, right? Because I bet a single paragraph beyond that, Aquinas would contradict himself.
No, I don't think so. I
bet he does. Go ahead, keep reading.
No, I got this from Summa Theologica, and that's actually from the... I have it pulled up here. I mean, I'm not gonna.
Humans incoming.
Utopia is St. Thomas More's, but I got this from the Summa, and what he does.
Thomas Aquinas was a great apologist. Don't get me wrong, but I don't agree. Aquinas is not a person that I agree with more often than not.
Okay, and that's kind of my point, because this is... You can't just say that this isn't Christian ethics. These are some of the most important and influential people in the history of Christianity. And
agreed.
Very good. But the problem is that I think, according to you, these ideas don't really have a place in government. But these are Christian ideas.
Why?
Do you understand the problem with
why
that?
are you saying that I think they don't have a place in government?
Because you said you don't agree with these ideas.
Yeah, it's just because I don't agree with an idea doesn't mean it doesn't have a place in government.
Yeah, but it's according to you.
No, the view here is, here's what the debate is. The debate is, Christians shouldn't be allowed in government. They shouldn't, right?
No, not Christians, Christianity.
Christianity.
Yeah,
Sorry, Christianity shouldn't be allowed in government. Fair enough. Okay, I'll go ahead and grant it, and you can reclaim your time from here too. But I just want to clarify this, that just so you understand, what does that have to do with Christianity should or shouldn't being in government? I don't actually understand that.
Because
can you help me out here?
Because if this is Christian ethics, and Andrew believes that the government needs more Christian ethics, but I can point at Christian ethics and it says that theft doesn't count if you're poor, then Andrew Wilson doesn't agree that Christian ethic belongs in government. Andrew Wilson doesn't agree that Christianity belongs in government.
I don't think you understand. Maybe we can start with this. What do you think Christian ethics are?
So that's a good question for your cross exam right now.
Yeah.
Planet Peterson.
Well, I mean, to answer, and he can reclaim the time. I just want to make sure that we're clear on this point, because it seems like we're talking. Do you think that inside of the ethical purview of Christianity that there's not rigorous debate? Of course.
Yeah, and this is fair. I think even in the cross exam, I think this is fair for. This was the whole thing I was getting at the beginning. It seems like they should have gone over this like right off the bat. This is such an easy thing to mess up, these distinctions, right? The sort of just Christian ethics in general versus Christian moral law, like Sharia law type stuff, right? Because we don't actually know what if Andrew is arguing for theocracy completely. We probably should know that based on like all of his previous debates, but you need to identify exactly specifically what you are talking about here.
There is. And not only is there, that's completely acceptable. And the idea that Thomas Aquinas could be debating across from, like an Orthodox bishop would be totally acceptable.
Yeah, well, I didn't really lay out very much of this in my opening, but I think this is the problem, I think, for the position that you take, is that these are basically contradictions. Whatever it is that you think the government should do, Christianity, I don't think, is ultimately the source, because you'd have to reject specific Christian ethics in favor of whatever Christian ethics you want, or claim that it comes from Christianity.
Yeah, but that would be the claim with any ideology which existed. Like any two, in fact, I would just say any two people which exist, that would be the case and claim would be any two people who disagree, then therefore the person I disagree with has no place in government. Like, that's silly. Like, I disagree with Christians on all sorts of things constantly, but when you're talking about a general normative framework, we don't disagree very much at all.
Well, I don't think you would agree with what the bishop at Trump's inauguration said, for example. So it is the case that you find. But
that's a fake bishop.
There you go. Fake bishop. So is that Christian ethics allowed? Is that Christian virtue allowed in governance, according to your system, Andrew? Well, no, probably not, because that's not a real bishop. Well, first of all, it's a fucking woman. Woman bishop. Yeah, unlikely.
Fake bishop.
Well, according to you, according to her, you're a fake bishop. You know, she probably
no. Their denomination recognized Orthodox as being Christian. We just don't recognize theirs.
So does that mean there's isn't, or does that just mean according to you guys there's isn't, right? That doesn't actually give us the answer as to whether they are fake or real Christian denomination, right? You still have to show why they are not.
Well, that's an interesting position. But anyways, you can find justifications in whatever you want normatively in government, but you're going to find the opposite of it too. So that means Christianity holds the position of X and not X. So whatever justification or reason you have for the normative
I think you're conflating two things here. So it's not that Christianity holds the position of X and not X. It's that some Christians could hold the position of X and not X.
Yes, but practicing
But I thought you just said Christians aren't what we're talking about, but Christianity, right?
Yeah, but it's a Christian ethic developed by...
Well, which Christian ethics are contradicting themselves? You're talking about specific people. So I can make this argument to say, let's say I was talking about red pillars. I could say, well, this red pillar over here contradicts this red pillar, but that wouldn't tell us what the red pill was. It wouldn't tell us what the normative framework was of the red pill, let's say. So you're just talking about particulars with specific people. You're not actually talking about the ideology itself.
Where's all my vistas?
So for clarification,
where's all my water?
About 3 minutes, and this is.
He can reclaim it. Look, I'm going to be super charitable here. He can definitely reclaim his time. I just want to make sure we clarify a few things. That's all.
Oh, I thought we were still on my time. I mean, I've been okay with it because I've been asking the questions I want to ask.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So I have 15 minutes left then.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's cool with me. Anyways, I hear what you're saying, and I think the next line of questioning I have kind of gets to it, which is, okay. So some historical stuff. And I'm not trying to poison the well or lump you in with this stuff. These things are not good, but I'm just throwing them out there. So
are we doing the slavery stuff now?
No, nothing about slavery, actually. But, I mean, I could talk about that, but whatever. In Virginia, this is in colonial times. There was a guy, his name was Hugh Davis. He was sentenced to corporal punishment for having relations with a black person. His specific accusation was, quote, abusing himself to the dishonor of God and shame of Christianity by defiling his body in lying with a Negro, unquote.
Jesus Christ.
We agree that that's bad. In 1959, Richard Loving and Mildred Jeter, they were both sentenced
I wish he
to jail
actually
in
made
Virginia,
Andrew say that he agreed
for the crime of
I
being
really
married.
do.
Richard was white
And look,
and Mildred
I'm
was
not
black.
I'm not claiming Andrew's a white nationalist or anything, but I think it's good to make these types of people, any of us, even me, like make me respond to things like that and actually verify that we agree that's bad. Just because you claim Christian doesn't mean you are, you have to follow the doctrine. Right, Tristan, I agree with you. Which is why I was asking, or I was hoping that Andrew could hash out why that woman bishop wasn't Christian. Right? I said he has to bring things like doctrine or something else to show why. He can't just be like, well, we don't recognize them as such, so they're not, right? You got to bring more like doctrine.
The trial judge, he gave them a deal that they could actually avoid jail if they agreed to flee the state of Virginia for 25 years. And his reason was, Almighty God created races, white, black, yellow, Malay, and red, and he placed them on separate continents. And but for the interference with his arrangement, there would be no cause for such marriage. The fact that he separated races shows that he did not intend for the races to mix. And if you look at polling, interracial marriage at this time had a 4% approval rating. It was widely deemed, 4% approval. Yeah, it was just widely deemed to be wrong. There's this guy, Pastor Anderson. He's a real piece of shit. He says, look, the Bible clearly says that homosexuals need to be put to death, and the United States government should do it. So,
hold on.
I'm sure that Andrew Wilson disagrees with all of that, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so were they wrong?
And,
what's going on?
Well, what you're using is called a genetic fallacy. So you're trying to attack the position based on the source of the particulars. So this is actually what you're making is a fallacious argument. If you were just asking me, can you just very quickly, and again, you can reclaim your time, but can you just pull up genetic fallacy and then tell us what it says?
Just from memory, my understanding of a genetic fallacy is...
Let's see. Genetic fallacy. Logical error that dismisses or validates an argument or information solely based on its source or origin rather than content or merit. Okay.
Because things occurred, like historically this is what occurred, then therefore it was good or justified that those things occurred.
It's a logical fallacy where someone rejects or accepts an argument based solely on its origin or source. And so the thing is that the origin and source, in this particular case, you're saying, wait a second, look at these particulars, and these particular people did bad things, and so therefore Christian ethics itself is in question. That seems silly. It's not actually attacking Christian ethics. You're just attacking bad things a person did and then saying somehow this relates to Christian ethics. That is quintessentially a genetic fallacy.
I don't think, maybe I misinterpreted Planet Peterson, but I don't think he's saying Christian ethics bad because look at these bad things in history. I think he's saying Christian ethics bad because there is a variety of different Christian ethics that come into clash with each other. For example, look at these things in the past and you now disagree with them, which I still don't think is a great argument because all of us, Christian, atheist, Muslim, whatever we are, we seem to progress through time and adapt our understanding of things. So in my opinion, it's totally fine. And it's good, in fact, that Christians debate with each other, have rigorous debate with each other, and sort of progress their thinking. However, they would probably disagree with me that it's progression because obviously God is the ultimate grounding and doesn't change or whatever else. But, you could just say that our understanding of it is progressing, right? Like we are progressing our understanding of Christian doctrine and everything else.
For sure. Now, if you put it in
Actually-
question form, I can still accept it, and I'll still answer to the question, even accepting the genetic fallacy, which is like, so what? There's laws in Kentucky that I believe you can't shoot rabbits from a trolley cart. I disagree with that law too. I think it's pretty stupid. For one thing, I want to shoot rabbits from a trolley cart. That's one. But the other thing is that I would not, if I were to say to you, secular ethics were bad. Now, if I were to say they were bad because I can't shoot rabbits from a trolley cart, and you disagree, therefore secular ethics bad, you would reject that, right? And rightfully so.
I'm not sure. I didn't follow the very end there that bad or that much.
Yeah, if I said
actually-
to you, this law bad, and person did bad thing based on this law, and then use the justification, we don't shoot rabbits from trolley carts because we're secularists, and then I applied that to all secularists, that would be the same fallacy that you're engaging in.
So genetic fallacy was already defined. This is just eating up time at this point.
Sure. So I actually think that you'll see that I'm not really doing that, but I have to kind of evolve the conversation. So
where are my
we can
drafts?
both agree
The
that that's
fuck?
wrong. And I would argue that you would probably say that what those people's positions was wrong from a Christian ethical position.
Sure.
I would wager, at least. Okay, perfect. So next question would be, do you think that the position today that the majority of Christians have are all correct? Or do you think that future Christians will look back at today and condemn certain positions that Christians hold?
Yeah. Okay. So I just want to make sure I got this right. So I'm just going to steel man this to make sure I have it correct, and then you can tell me yes or no before I answer. And again, you can reclaim your time. I just want to make sure I get it right. So the question is, has Christian ethics evolved? And will Christian ethics continue to evolve so people will look back now and say, hey, we got this wrong? Is that correct?
In a way, yeah.
Okay, well, then the answer is most assuredly yes. There's going to be all sorts of groups that we're going to point to in the future and say they got Christian ethics wrong, for sure.
Okay, so I think we kind of already answered, or you kind of already answered this, but what is it that you appeal to condemn those things I brought up earlier?
Well, I don't know. At this point, I need to understand how this is pertinent to Christians shouldn't be in government. I need to actually understand that. Because now you're getting in, you started by saying you don't want to get into a normative framework, and now you're bringing it to a normative framework, which I don't understand.
I don't think, I never said that. I said I don't want to get into a moral one.
That's a normative framework.
Well, he literally said that he wanted
morals?
to do normative.
Yeah, ought. Those are ought.
Right, that he wanted to stay away from like meta ethics essentially and stick in the normative. That's what I remember him saying.
Claims, right? You should or should not do, that's normative.
I draw a distinction between morality and normative ones.
Well, I don't
because-
understand. Well, how? If you say something is moral, you ought do what's moral, right? That's normative.
No, I don't think you can derive an ought from an is, but in normative, we can say that.
Well, how do you
I
wait,
discussed
what?
this.
Hang on.
Well,
help me out with this real
Yeah,
quick.
but Andrew, I'm not being
briefly.
interrogated.
Reclaim the
right
time.
now,
Reclaim
but
the
I can-
time. I just
Well,
need to
I
clarify.
am reclaiming the time,
just
but I'm
need
going to
clarify
answer
this.
your question.
I just need to clarify. That's all I'm asking, is for clarification. How can you describe a thing as being moral without an ought? I don't even understand that.
So that's a good question for the cross exam.
No,
Yeah,
I need that
and I
clarified
can-
now, or I can't. I don't even know what he's asking me. So
I
just
understand-
clarify it quickly.
I understand that moral systems are systems of prescriptions or whatever for taboos or claims of what you should do, like should or should not.
Yeah, so normative.
Like in a way, but I don't. But well, no, because it's not. I don't think it's the same thing as normative, because again, like what I was talking about earlier in my opening statement was, I can tell you that a compass is better at drawing a straight, or as I'm sorry, a ruler is better at drawing a straight line than a compass.
Yeah, those are
I'm not telling you
descriptive.
it's morally
that's-
wrong to draw.
Yeah, I
circles
agree. That's
or
all
morally wrong to
descriptive.
draw bad
Yeah,
straight lines.
correct.
or
That's
that you
descriptive,
should
but
do
that's
either.
descriptive though. So you're making a descriptive claim. This, when you say better, you're not making a normative claim. You're not saying you ought to make a better straight line. You're just saying this does make a better straight line. It's still descriptive. But when you're talking about how should Christians, how ought Christians do X, then those are normative. That's a normative framework that you're diving into. You're talking about oughts then. So when you're talking about descriptors, when you're saying, hey, a ruler does make a better straight line than a compass, right? That is not a you should make better straight lines with rulers.
That's
These
his
are
whole
distinct.
fucking
So
point.
when you're getting into normative
Holy
claims,
shit, that's
though,
his whole point.
right? I need you to tell me how this ties into the topic of whether or not Christians shouldn't be in government, because that's your claim.
I'm pointing out I'm going to get there very soon, and I'm going to do that by pointing out a
I
contradiction.
see.
Taco,
So the problem here is the whole prompt is inclusive of an ought statement, right? So Andrew actually can sort of hold him to this, right? Because Planet Peterson is trying to say, well, you know, I'm just descriptively saying, just like an engine, that there is a better system and a worse system, right? But the whole prompt is like, well, why should we prefer the better system, right? Like Andrew can literally just be like, well, me as a person, I could just prefer a bad engine. Why ought I prefer a good engine, right? And then obviously the reason would be, so you can give a reason for the ought. That doesn't necessarily compel anybody, but the reason would be, well, because an engine is designed to function in a way that it carries you, like, let's say like a car engine, that it's capable of carrying you around to different locations or whatever else. So the reason for the ought would come from, if you want to be able to travel around in a car, then you ought value the better engine, right? So in the same way for the governing system, you could say, well, if you do care about functioning societies and flourishing societies and good systems of government, well, then you ought to value the better system, right? So you can bridge the gap with an if-then statement. It's called a hypothetical imperative.
I have 5 minutes. Is my time paused
I've
or
added
not?
7 minutes so far. There's a lot of
Okay.
time being
Yeah.
taken over for
Yep.
other
I
questions and
understand.
whatnot.
Well, you can't give him time back. You can't give him time back for me answering questions. You can just give him time back for me clarifying them. That's what's fair.
Yeah, but I think we're now
I've
done
been
with
very
the
fair with it. It's been more
clarification
than
time.
7 minutes. So
All right, go
this is
ahead.
Peterson's cross-exam.
That's fine.
Is it
Andrew, you're
Taco? I
fine.
didn't know that. I didn't know that, Taco.
So here's
That was
where I
funny.
think the problem lies in.
Gotta give it to Andrew. He is
you're
funny
appealing
sometimes.
to a Christian ethic to condemn what those people did in the past. I asked you about that earlier. You said yes. But that's going to happen in the future to positions that Christians hold today. So I don't understand how you can use the Bible or Christian ethics, because people in the future will judge you or other Christians to be wrong using Christian ethics.
Yeah, but can you
I think that's the
imagine,
contradiction.
like here, well, first of all, there's no contradiction, right? A contradiction is a proposition in its negation. There's no negation of any proposition that you've made. All you've said is
yes,
that
there is.
no,
Because-
no. What
Yes,
you said
because
is
you're going to hold on. You're going to argue these are the things we should do. These are the things we shouldn't do.
Mhm.
That's what slave traders and segregationists said in the past, appealing
what?
to Christianity.
that's a genetic
But you-
fallacy again.
But you appeal to Christianity to say that
Ooh,
they're
we got
yeah,
more
but what's
water.
my
Let's go.
proposition
but
and
your
its
ethic
negation?
will be used
What-
against you in the
Yeah, but-
future.
bro,
Meaning you
I don't
don't
know
have
why-
the correct
listen, I
ethic
gotta-
according
let-
to Christianity.
Okay, listen, so that you understand. The proposition its negation has to be mine in order for there to be a contradiction. You're saying that Christianity contradicts itself. You have to give me the proposition Christianity gives, and then its negation in order to demonstrate the contradiction. What you're doing is you're giving particulars and saying because people make the self-ID claim of X, therefore this system is flawed. Now, if somebody did that back, you'd never accept it in a million years. So if somebody were to say, well, this secularist in communist Russia, which was a secular nation, did the whole Holodomor, therefore all secular ethics are bad, you'd never accept that in a million years, right? Because it's silly. It makes no sense.
Well, I believe in moral progress. Well, not really moral progress, I guess, but I don't know what else to call it. But if you believe that you have an objective and unchanging ethic, then to say yes, and the ethic evolves over time, to me that screams that you're appealing to something outside of Christianity.
Sure. Hang on, you're right. Hang on. I'm going to give you some
no,
charity
Andrew,
here.
this is actually I only need 10 seconds. You're claiming that it's grounded in Christianity, but everybody at every instance has done that, and they use that logic to claim that the other person's ethic was wrong, and that's what I think the contradiction is.
Yeah, that makes no sense though, because all you're saying is that a person can self-ID with a particular, and therefore everything will be applied to the particular, even if people don't follow the particular ethic. When you're talking about the shared value of Christendom, especially in Eastern Orthodoxy, or here, I'll give you a better example. So fascism is what really allowed for essentially interracial marriage. That was not a thing which was done until basically the Catholic Church in Italy allowed that to begin. Before that, all of human history was basically against any sort of miscegenation. And it doesn't matter what people group you're talking about, they were essentially against miscegenation. And that's what makes it a genetic fallacy. What you're doing is you're taking the history of the time period and you're associating it to the laws of the land and the particulars of the time period, and then you're moving it forward and saying, well, wait, this is what Christian ethics was. It's not. It's not what Christian ethics was. And you can't point to
but
individual...
you have Christian ethics today?
We Christian ethics, what
People,
is... Yeah, I'm trying to explain.
This is the no true Scotsman fallacy.
I think I'm going to be... Okay. Make it 12:10. All right, so in 15 minutes, we're going to be talking to Space Apache from Discord. I met him in Modern Day Debate Discord. So we're going to be talking about moral theory. I like to call it moral theory combat. Just sort of pressing our systems together and... Sorry, I had to turn this fan on. All right.
Which is implicit in the contradiction. You're sitting here saying
not a no true
they
Scotsman
weren't
fallacy.
Christians, whereas in the future, this was just going to happen
No,
again.
I didn't say
and
they
they'll
weren't
do the same
Christians.
thing
I
to
said
you.
that they... I
Yes, you
didn't say
did.
they weren't... Nope. I said
Or
they
you
weren't
said that they
Christian.
weren't using Christian ethics.
Nope, I said they violated them. So here's the thing.
Same
Hang on.
difference.
No, it's not the same difference. When you use a no true
What?
Scotsman, I'll explain so that you understand.
Go ahead.
When you use a no true Scotsman fallacy, you're misapplying it. If I were to say this group over here, they just weren't Christians and there's absent no justification, it'd be a no true Scotsman fallacy. But if I say that a person follows or self-IDs an ethical framework and then doesn't follow the ethical framework itself, that's not a no true Scotsman fallacy. That's pointing to particulars in the ethical normative work and saying X person violated those ethics. And they can still self-ID as, in this case, the Scotsman, right? But that wouldn't be a no true Scotsman fallacy. Do you understand the difference there in the particulars?
Okay, there's 5 minutes left, and let's try to answer the remainder. I cannot speak. The remainder of the questions directly and concisely.
Okay. I don't think there are 5 minutes left because my timer was just about to run out. Because Andrew did say, like, hey, I'm taking over, but he can reclaim his time. But I started my stopwatch.
I added 7 minutes in total.
Well, I think you're going to end up giving me too much time. Like, I'm going to try to be fair.
Okay.
I'm going to address what you said, Andrew, and then I had a bunch of questions, but there's only one more I want to ask because I don't want to take up a huge amount of time. That would look unfair. But you lost me on the no true Scotsman thing there because
creativity. It's in you. Uncap and create.
The issue I'm having here is you're saying that the people in the past, they violated the Christian ethic, but that's what people in the future are going to say about Christians today, and the claims,
Fierce dust
like
devils.
political or
No.
whatever, that they make, and they ground it in Christianity, and they'll say that there's the violation, or that they violated it as well. That's what I think is the pernicious contradiction in all of this. So
Well, even if that fallacy, like even if I granted for a second, just for the sake of argument, that it was the no true Scotsman fallacy, it still actually wouldn't be a contradiction. There's still no proposition and its negation happening at the same time. Well, all that would happen is that you could point out that I made some sort of fallacious argument, like, oh, they weren't real Christians. However, the thing is like, if you follow any ideology on planet Earth, if you're a utilitarian, for instance, but you're not acting in a fashion which is utilitarian, you're not following the normative framework of utilitarianism, it's very easy for me to say, okay, UID is a utilitarian, but you're violating the ethical purviews of utilitarianism.
How so, Mark
That's not a
Lacey?
no true Scotsman fallacy. It's in a
I've been charitable, honestly, and both sides have made good points, both sides have made dumb points. So when you say Andrew is dominating this wealth, what exactly do you mean? I'm assuming you're probably an Andrew Wilson simp, because even people that I am biased toward and that I agree with more often, I'm capable of calling out things that they've gotten wrong, right? I'm capable of recognizing when they aren't just dominating something. Like, you could even say maybe Andrew's winning this debate, but pretty simpy to just be like, oh, Andrew Wilson's just dominating. He's made all the good points. No one can defeat this master.
objective statement of truth.
That's a categorical imperative type of notion that I'm hearing there. I mean, anybody
No,
can
it's not
fall
an
short
imperative.
of
It's
anybody
not
can fall
Kantian
short
ethics.
of anybody can fall short of what they claim they believe in. We do that all the time. But
Yes.
but that's
Well,
not the same
Christianity
thing
actually
as
adjusts for this inside
grounding
of
what
its
you're
normative
doing
ethics.
in what your belief
Yeah.
is.
So yeah, you understand Christianity actually has an adjustment for this. The idea of you shall know them by their fruits. So essentially, we can tell when people are violating Christian ethics, and our duty is to bring them back to the fold of Christianity. So when you point to just a particular of a violation of Christian ethics, that does not mean that this is on the back of Christianity. That would be a no true Scotsman fallacy. So if you're trying to say because Christians did this, and the Christian here are saying, well, wait, they aren't real, you would actually be making that fallacy. So the thing is, like, to back it up, just so you understand, if you violate your ethical purview with self ID, it's not a no true Scotsman fallacy for me to explain that inside of the religious purview, in this case Christianity, we know them by their fruits. That's what we know them by, and we have the particulars in order to make those judgments.
The problem there is, I'll say this and I'll just move on to the last thing. You're kind of, I don't know if I would call it begging the question or whatever, but you're telling them they violated, but you're ascribing.
Mark, you haven't hurt my feelings. Don't worry, bud. I tend to raise my voice and talk loudly when I'm disagreeing with people. If that hurt your feelings, then I'm so sorry about that, okay? But don't worry, you haven't hurt mine. I just tend to find that with Andrew Wilson in particular, he has a very, very simp following who literally are blinded to any of the blunders he ever makes. Maybe you just joined, but I have already pointed out a few reasonings in which Andrew went wrong. So maybe you missed those. Well, I'm not going to go back and I don't remember exactly what they were, but the point is, I literally said to you, maybe you could say Andrew's winning this debate, right? So even for my bias towards, which I don't know Planet Peterson at all. Like, I've seen him here and there. I don't really care about the people. I care more about the arguments and the positions. So you could say I'm more biased and lean toward Peterson's position, obviously, right? We all have bias. but I'm actually capable of still recognizing when Planet Peterson is reasoning incorrectly. I've also, throughout this video, called out Planet Peterson's incorrect reasonings. So to say I'm being hypocritical is just blatantly false. Maybe you shouldn't just join lives for a quick second and think you understand everything that's going on based on one criticism you've seen from your little master debater here that you love so much.
Being your ethic onto them and saying they violated it, instead of understanding that according to them, this is the ethic.
So then as long as people groups at
belabored
that
this too
time
far.
who are Christians also claim that they violated it, you would have no case? Does that even make sense to you?
I didn't catch that.
So if Christians at the time condemned that as being non-Christian behavior, then you wouldn't have an argument, right?
For that particular thing, but it's not as if there
Yeah,
aren't
right. Except you
innumerable
still would.
positions.
That's the problem, though. You still actually would have an argument for that particular thing. That's why the argument has no merit. It has no merit simply because you're pointing
I
to
disagree.
You're pointing to a particular.
You realize that you came in here with the claptrap, right? And I responded to your claptrap with claptrap, right? Because you came in and said, Andrew is dominating this whelk. Like, that in no way tells me how he's dominating him, the positions he's defended, right? You're not actually doing anything except claptrap. And now you're calling me out for responding to the clap with more clap? Dude, like, you're the one projecting the hypocrisy here. This is ridiculous. If you want to come fucking debate me, come get in my Discord. Let's go. Like, otherwise, I'll probably just stop responding to you now.
And then you say, based on the particular, can we not look at our normative framework and see if people stepped outside of the particular? And it's like, yeah, of course we can. Of course. Sure. You do it all the time. Everybody does that normative framework. We have to. By the way, begging the question
30 seconds
would be if you had a proposition, and then inside of the proposition, you put essentially what the conclusion was in the...
All right. We're going to talk to Space Apache now. And I mean it, Mark. If you want to come, like, argue and debate with me, you are very much welcome. My Discord channel is in the description. Feel free to come defend your positions, and I'll defend mine. We don't have to sit here and cry like little babies over the comments. And I said we. I'm not just putting that on you, Mark. I'm putting that on both of us as interlocutors, okay?